Hello everyone and welcome to the program. This is Sunday Politics on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimbaloye in Lagos. Well, Nigerian economy has yet again slipped into recession. The economic shock is coming months after coronavirus hit the world, and most economies experienced the worst ever economic downturn in history. For Nigeria, the same happened in 2016, making it the second recession in the space of 4 years. The economic outlook was captured in a new report released by the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics on Saturday. Official figures published by the NBS show that the economy shrank again in the third quarter of this year. The nation's economy maintained a second consecutive negative growth after contracting by 3.62% in the third quarter. The cumulative gross domestic product GDP for the first 9 months of 2020, therefore, it stood at 2.48%, just as it recorded a minus 6.10% in the second quarter. In simple terms, Nigerian economy is on a negative progression and in trouble. Well, instead of a growth, it has declined, and that may affect practically everything, because the economy is at the center of everything, our lives as a people. Let's get some insights into the implications of these. I'm being joined tonight by a former vice presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, and a former governor of Anambra State, Mr. Peter Obi. He joins us from Enugu. Thank you so much, Mr. Obi, for joining us tonight on the program. Perhaps before we get into the issues of the economy, let's digress for a second into the issue of politics. We saw that over the last few days, your party has lost yet a governor in terms of defection. The governor of Ebonyi State left your party. Without the defection of Governor Dave Umahi, do you fear that the PDP might be losing grip on of its political dominance on the Southeast region, where you're from also?
Hello, Shem. I hope you're hearing me very well.
Absolutely.
Shem, let me start by thanking you for inviting me, and thank your team at Channels for the great work you're doing in building a better Nigeria. Shem, this year, 2020, two recent UN reports clearly showed that Nigeria, one, have surpassed India as the world capital of under 5 mortality. This is a country of 1.2 billion. We have surpassed them. And that report shows that it came 2 years ahead of schedule. The second report is that Nigeria is now the world capital, the highest in drug abuse prevalence, 14.3%, as against the global average of 5.3%. This notwithstanding that we, before the COVID situation, were the world capital of people living in extreme poverty, world capital of over 15 million under children out of school, with over 75% having not been in school at all, with the worst inequality of 157% over 157, as well as youth underemployment and unemployment of about 50%. So I think it would be unfair, and I urge all politicians or leaders across the aisle to concentrate on discussing issues that concerns the declining of this country now. Talking about the issue of defection, 2023 elections and everything should be off the table now, because we have a crisis situation where we have millions of people not knowing where the next meal will come from. We need
Governor
to be
Obi,
discussing about how we are going to pull people out of poverty.
yeah.
You just said we have gone into recession again in 2 years, and I can tell you this particular recession will be worse. The country is becoming physically unviable. That is our focus now, not about those who are leaving their party or those who are coming in. Our concentration now is how do we pull people out of poverty? How do we get this turn around this economy?
All right, Governor Obi, I was going to come there because that's the focus of our conversation tonight. But I wanted us to lift off some of the other conversation around politics before we get into that. But I would still like you to comment on some of the issues in your party. You are a politician, you're a former governor, a vice presidential candidate in 2019. So some of these issues are equally very important because politics also is at the center point of our lives. Thus, I would like to get your comment.
They are not important.
No, they are very important, Governor, because politics, just a moment. I disagree. Politics is important. Just a moment, please. I disagree because politics is responsible for leadership. And so leadership will handle economy. So when you get politics right, you are invariably on the right path of getting a lot of things right. So if we're fixing the politics of this country, we are also fixing a lot of things. So I'd like to get your comment if you please like to.
So I want us to concentrate on the area. Globally today, every nation of the world is concentrating on dealing with issues that affect them. If you look at even the G20 summit, a club we should have belonged to since, if not that we've always concentrated on mundane things that doesn't concern us. On issue of politics, when 2023 elections come, all Nigerians need to do is to reflect in their past and see how they can elect leaders who have track record, proven track record of delivery, that are competent, that have the capacity to turn around the country. For now, our concentration on both halves is how to deal with this issue. So in 2016, when we had the reverse recession, if we recall on the 17th May 2017, I was on the platform and saying, we're borrowing a lot. Our borrowing and getting is not sustainable. And the then minister said he's going to spend our way out of recession. What are we going to do in this second recession now? Every other country is discussing their economy and how to put their people out of poverty. So we cannot concentrate on issue of politics. Let's leave it out of the table.
So you're not concerned about how we're going to govern this country. Economy is very important. But I said, look,
I'm concerned about it. That we will deal with that when election is near. When the elections come, because whatever we do now, we are not going to remove anybody from office.
You're not bothered about the politics of your political party.
In 2023, that's a long way. Are you sure the way we are going now, we'll get there? Listen, we had 98 million people under poverty before COVID. I can tell you with COVID, that number have escalated. You have unemployment. So I can tell you the number of bankruptcies of micro, small, medium businesses. From this COVID situation is something you cannot imagine. All over the world, first world, second world, and MSMEs are collapsing. So imagine what has happened to them in Nigeria. So what we should do now is to concentrate on the monetary and physical policies to start pulling people out of poverty. If you look at it now, every avenue, people are collapsing. If you look at even what some of the outcome or what happened with recent protests, you could see that we're heading into a problem. And I want our energy to be concentrated in that problem. The politicians, the class where I belong, should do more seriously across party lines to be able to arrest the situation before it gets out of hand. For me, it is discussing how do we put food on people's table. Election will come, and I believe in it. That's how other nations work. When elections come, they look at people's record, look at people's past, look at where they are coming from, allow, and then see how they can elect the best. If I tell you today that things are good or bad, share which election does it affect? In 2023, you have recession in 2020. Is that recession going to be solved if I tell you that 2023 is going to be? Let's deal with the recession we have just entered.
All right, Governor Obi, let's dive into it. Well, I'm prepared for that conversation, and so let's get into it. First and foremost, I know some of your views as regarding the issue of borrowing. You've been speaking about it. You oppose borrowing, but some economists would say that when you are in crisis,
So I
you
never
spend.
oppose borrowing.
But you, at some point, you said earlier that you told the Minister of the Economy about the manner in which the government has been borrowing. So give us your view on the manner in which Nigeria has borrowed as it relates to this issue of recession, so that we get that clearly.
So I'm against borrowing for consumption. If you must borrow, and this is non-critical that we must do that, you must borrow for production. The reason why we are in this mess is that the country is borrowing money and throwing at consumption. We must borrow strictly for production. The economy is not productive. That is why it's not creating jobs. That is why it's not putting food on people's table. That is why, so if you're a businessman, the more you borrow money and invest properly, the more your business grows. Nigeria is borrowing money. The economy is not growing. Their GDP is not growing. Then there's something wrong. We now have a debt of almost a quarter of our GDP, about $100 billion. Tell where's investment for $100 billion? If we invest $100 billion properly, I assure you, we won't be where we are now. Even if we are, because due to COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of nations that have not experienced recession went into recession. It would have been a different thing. It would have been manageable. But I can tell you, because the money we borrowed and are still borrowing is not being properly invested, even the little earning we're doing, we're still not investing properly. That is why we're headed south. I'm not against borrowing. Borrowing is important, but you must borrow for investment. You must not borrow for consumption. You must not borrow. What we do here is that we borrow money and waste it. Because of it, you don't see the investment, and there's nothing to pay back. Yeah, that's why we're using about 90% of our revenue to service debt. Because the money you have borrowed is not producing anything. People are making money without production. So you're using your resources to service debt. And because of it, you don't have money for investment, to invest in critical areas. I just told you to two recent reports that came out this year that look at the infant mortality, which is a health issue. With COVID-19 is a health issue. Look at the drug abuse, it's a health issue. Why do you think we have high level of drug prevalence? Because you don't have an economy. So young people that will be in their productive sector doing nothing are resorting to drugs. Young people in their productive sector doing nothing are resorting to crime and all sorts of things. And if you want to deal with this issue, that is would be a consideration, and it must be genuine. There must be an properly articulated, implementable, measurable policies. It is not just enough to say we are going to pull 100 million out of poverty. How?
So,
If you say you're going from Lagos, to Ibadan, you must be able to say this is the route, this is the vehicle, and people can measure so they know where you're moving to.
all right, Governor Obi, just all right. So I wanted to get it clearly. You're talking about the issues of financial prudence and under this government. How would you describe it? You said you've not opposed borrowing, but what is being used for? But how would you describe the management of resources under the Buhari government?
Well, I can tell you, it is as wasteful as it used to be. And that's the one that they preach against it. They said it'll be more prudent and everything. I've not seen it, Michelle. This is not something you preach. It's something you must see. I, for one, have been campaigning about cost of governance. And it's something I know and something I've practiced. The cost of governance in Nigeria is unacceptable anywhere in the world. I can say it categorically. Tell you, there's nowhere in the world we can use what I've given this example several times all over, everywhere. What is the GDP of Nigeria? The biggest economy in America is California. A GDP of 1.7 trillion, 4 times Nigerian GDP. The governor of California does not use 4 vehicles as convoy. New York is followed by New York at 1.5 trillion. Again, 4 times Nigerian GDP. Governor Como goes to work by train. I'm not saying we should go to work by train, but I'm just giving you an example. The cost of governance here is unacceptable. There's too much waste.
But since you touched on the issue of cost of governance, you've been in government before. In what specifically, in what areas, if you have maybe 1, 2, or 3 areas that you think will be very strategic in cutting cost of governance, what would these areas be?
There's so many areas, Shane. And there's so many areas in terms of traveling, in terms of conferences, so many areas, Shane, that you can cut cost of governance. Every state in Nigeria today owns a lodge and office in Abuja. Every state in America doesn't own a house in Washington. This is the biggest economy. They don't own a house. The big countries of the UK doesn't own a house in London. I can go on and tell you. I have been a governor. I know what it costs Anambra State to keep a lodge in Abuja that we paid about 1 billion to buy. I know what it cost us until I shut it down and rented it out. And we have the same similar thing in Lagos. And this is just the state. The nation is the same thing. The cost of governance, the waste, conferences, meetings, all sorts of things. People are attending, even going to conferences abroad. We have learned a lot. Let's look ourselves in here, because even other things, movement, there's so many things that is happening, so that it is not something I can describe to you easily.
All right. So, Governor,
I've seen it.
All right. We are due for a break in about 40 seconds, but I need a quick answer, if you may, please, sir. And I'd like to ask, do you blame the recession that Nigeria slipped into now on the Buhari government?
Who do you blame it on? You blame it on the people who are in charge. There's a combination. Let me tell you what it is. You can say we have a COVID situation. We have this and we have that. Yes, I believe that the COVID situation might have expected things that brought us to this level, but we have not done the right things in the past, which will make it, now that we've gone into it, even more difficult to come out of it. Because if we borrowed our way out of the last one, None that is globally. I don't know where we're going to borrow the money.
Former Governor Obi, let's get back into. I was asking, you said you blame the recession for 2020, the recession in Nigeria, on the Buhari government. But the COVID-19, well, it's tagged a COVID-19 recession, global recession, is a major ongoing global economic crisis which has caused both a recession in some nations and in others a depression. So it's not only a Nigerian problem. This was induced by the COVID-19. But is it right to blame the government for this recession, because analysts believe that it is COVID-19 inflicted?
So let me repeat what I said again. I said, I was very clear in what I said, that while you can say that it was COVID-19 contributed to it, and it happened globally, there's so many nations like Australia and everything that have never had recession, or New Zealand going into recession, that ours will be worse because we have not in the past did what was right for our economy, that you will see that our decline and coming out of it will go deeper than the others. I'm not saying COVID-19 didn't contribute, but it's not the same thing if you say your journey is from Lagos to Ibadan, and then you're on that road doing the right things, driving with the right vehicles and everything, and then for somebody who was on the wrong direction to turn around and be able to meet it. We have gone into recession, and this recession is going to be worse than the 2016 one, because the monies we borrowed to pull ourselves out of the first one was not properly invested. The money we're borrowing today to keep going are not being properly invested. So what we need now is to go into a very rigorous regime of formulating a very rigorous, I said it before, implementable and measurable monetary and fiscal policies to drive ourselves out of the present situation. And it is critical that we do that as quickly, we start doing it immediately. That's why from the outset I said, let's not talk about issue of political movements and concentrate on our economy. We have a lot of businesses that have collapsed due to COVID-19. Transporters, hoteliers, all service, everything that have been in lockdown have not seen any support, monetary and physical. Yes, there's news and noise and everywhere of support, but nobody's getting the support. We now need to do something very drastic.
I'd like to get your reaction on the comment made by the United Kingdom Trade Envoy to Nigeria, Helen Grant, who said that Nigeria is the fastest growing economy despite the recession.
Well, you know, I'm a trader in Onitsha. I don't listen to all those comments by the world-class people, because most of them don't actually know what is happening. I operate in the market, and I can tell you, yes, the economy is thriving. That is what, from his own perspective. But I'm telling you that most of the micro, small, medium businesses have collapsed. Those who haven't collapsed are actually on life support. Something needs to be done to put them out of there. We now have to move this economy from consumption to production. We have to make it a productive economy. Government must now do something. They must reduce this poverty, help to create jobs for the youth, reduce our dependence on oil as only main source of foreign exchange. There's so many things we need to do as quickly as possible. That's why I talked about cost of governance. Government have now to turn this economy to be private sector led. If it's private sector led, they will reduce all this borrowing that are not productive.
All right.
If you see any economy where government borrowing is more than the private sector borrowing, that economy is a wasteful economy, the consumption economy.
Let me quickly point this out, and perhaps will lead me to the next question. As at August this year, Canada joined some of the biggest world economies like France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States in reporting that its economy shrunk dramatically in the first half of 2020 due to the pandemic. In fact, the Canadian economic output shrunk by 11.5% between April and June, the sharpest decline in records dating back to 1961. A lot of people will even say since the Great Depression. Now, I like to we know that what we have entered into might be a tough curve for Nigeria. But let me ask you, former Governor Obi, are there quick fixes or are there low-hanging fruit from some of the pointers you have raised that we can quickly take advantage of?
So you're just comparing our economy with those who, yes, they run into the same problem, but they're injecting also physical and monetary policies to put their people out of there. I don't even want us to compare ourselves with Germany or Canada or UK. These are first world economies. Other economies that you can compare us with. Look at the stimulus in which we are now using to pull ourselves out of this. Go and look at the smaller economies that you can compare us with. Even just in Africa alone, we are the biggest economy. Our total physical and monetary stimulus is 2.2 trillion. So that's about $5 billion. South Africa, the second biggest economy, is spending $26 billion. And yet they're in trouble. Out of this 20, and we are 200 million, they are 55 million. Out of this 26 billion, they are throwing 5.5 billion to micro, small, medium businesses alone. They are throwing 2.5 billion to create new jobs. They are throwing 5 billion to ensure that companies don't go under by supporting them to pay their salaries and keep their workers going. This is what nations all over the world are doing.
All right, former Governor Obi, just a moment, so that we can wrap up the conversation. I just have about 30 seconds. Some of the opinion that the Nigerian economy is very resilient, but is it a hopeless situation? And in fact, if you can project for us within these 30 seconds that you have left with us, how quickly or how soon do you see Nigeria getting out of this recession?
It will take a long time because we were in a what you can call a difficult situation before the COVID-19. So our situation have gotten worse unless we imbibe the physical discipline, extreme physical discipline. We are in for a bumpy situation, the one that will run out of control. We need to now take very difficult decisions to immediately buy good physical discipline, and ensure that we move this economy from consumption to production, 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 production. People must now make money by being productive. No longer can we allow any waste.
All right.
That's it.
We must leave it at that. Former vice presidential candidate of the PDP in the 2019 election and former governor of Anambra State, Governor Peter Obi, thank you indeed for your time tonight on the program.
Thank you for having me, Cheryl.
Thank you.